So next up, we're very pleased to have our state session where we're going to talk about leading the accessibility charge from the state down. Notice not all of our chairs are full. This isn't necessarily, again, please make sure we've got conversations out in the hall. But as we talk about this, we've only got a few states here, and I've had the very distinct pleasure of getting to go to Michigan a few times now. I was the keynote speaker at the Governor's Conference this year, and I was just so impressed with everything that they're doing. And I know they've done a lot of grants, and Oregon's done a lot of grants. We've seen some really neat things in accessibility from these states and also from Canada. So we're very excited to see the presentation. I've actually spoken in Ottawa as well. I was part of Ottawa Live last year. So it's really exciting to see these leaders up here talking about how they have changed the culture in their states to raise the level of interest in accessibility. So I'd love to hear more about that from your perspective. One, what caused the shift for you to take that step into becoming more accessible? And then how have you led that charge from the state side instead of just the DMO side? So before you speak, please make sure you introduce yourself, tell us where you're from and what your role is there, and again, be sure to include a description, a visual description.
Yeah, I'll start. My name is Nick Nerbonne. I'm with Travel Michigan. I'm the Media, Digital, and Industry Relations Director. So work with our public relations, social media, and our industry relations, which is a very important part of what we do. We have over 50 CVB partners and DMOs across the state that we work with on all kinds of initiatives, including accessibility. And something we're thrilled to be here representing Michigan and learning more as we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Harvey. I'm the Director of Industry Partnerships and Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility for Destination British Columbia, which is the Western British Columbia, for those of you who might need to be reacquainted with a map, is on the far west coast of Canada. It's the third largest province in our country, bordered to the south by Washington, Idaho, and Montana. And it's a very large province. It's 4 times the size of Texas, to give you some perspective. So we do a lot of work with communities across our province and a lot around accessibility as well. So for me, I'm a early 60s, brown, gray hair, wearing some rose-colored pants and a black blouse and some glasses. And I'm sitting next to Kevin.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Kevin Wright. I'm the Vice President of Brand Stewardship at Travel Oregon, which is the state tourism office. We like to use a lot of acronyms. You'll hear us say things like DMO, which is short for Destination Management Organization. So that's whether it's a state, local, regional DMO. So I'm at the state DMO, basically manage our marketing and sales efforts. I am what? I'm wearing all blue today. Blue pants, blue sport coat, blue shirt, and some brown shoes.
Awesome, thank you. So tell us a little bit about how the initiative started and what you're doing to support those who are working on their accessibility.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to start, and thank you to my colleagues here on the stage. I want to also describe that I'm wearing a burgundy-colored jacket with a light blue shirt and kind of a beige-colored pants and shoes. But with accessibility, I talked to my former colleague, Dave Lorenz, who retired last year. Dave has been a passionate advocate for accessibility in Michigan, has been a driver behind a lot of the things that we've done as a state, because I wanted to get an idea of when did these initiatives start in Michigan. It started well before the advent of websites and things, obviously, but as about 10 years ago or so, as technology began to progress, digital accessibility was one of the first things we worked on. We wanted to make sure that our website was accessible to those who could use it. There wasn't technology yet for captions on videos, alt text on photos. All those things was still kind of emerging, but we really tried to do as much as we could as to get the travel planning process and make it as accessible as possible. Around that time, Dave began working with Julie Pinkston at Choose Lansing because they were doing a sensory-friendly performance at Michigan State University at the Performing Arts Theater there. And Julie has been a very passionate advocate for accessibility in Michigan and specifically in Lansing. Julie was to be attending this conference but had to stay back for some family issues. And so I will be sharing more about some of her efforts a little bit later this afternoon. But in general, the efforts to begin accessibility has been really the past 10 years. And in the last 5 years, as digital technology has advanced, and we've been able to have some funding to do some initiatives directly with our partners across the state, those efforts have expanded.
Amazing. Okay.
I was reflecting on sort of our journey in British Columbia around how we've tried over the years to become more accessible. And for us, it's really been kind of pivoted around big events. So in 2010, we hosted the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And in preparation and lead up to those important games for our province, I was going to say state there for a minute, but I better stay national. We looked around and we thought, we're going to welcome the world to our province, and we better up the ante a bit on the accessible tourism experience. So that was one moment in time. And then a few years after that successful event, our government in British Columbia and in Canada, because we don't have ADA in Canada, so in 2019, the country passed the Accessible Canada Act, and then the provinces started layering in under that with their own individual legislation. So in the lead up to that legislation being passed, our provincial government said, we got to focus on becoming more accessible across all areas of how a province operates. So we developed a strategy and a framework in 2019, and we've been building on that strategy and framework since. And interestingly, there's another kind of moment in time coming up as we prepare again to host the 2025 Invictus Games in February, which is a sporting event for para-athletics, and it's being held in Whistler and Vancouver. So again, these major areas are ramping up a little bit more, and you have that new sort of rallying point for our industry to step up. So it's kind of been based a little bit more on events and big moments in time like that.
It's interesting. I was reflecting as well, and I think there were things in play, but I think for me, I was thinking about the murder of George Floyd and the social reckoning that occurred during that time. And I think at Travel Oregon, we really looked inward. How do we foster a welcoming destination, and started, again, looking inward and focusing in on us as an organization. And through our DEI work, really put equity as a key pillar of our vision. And now it is one of 4 major objectives for our 10-year vision, and there's many strategies that we don't have time to get into, but there's 3 right now that we're focused on. One is integrating DEI agency-wide, so that's that inward look. The second strategy is connecting with what we say are underserved communities, so accessibility is in there, people of color, our tribes, LGBTQAI+, and so making connections with those communities, those underserved communities, and then working towards developing experiences with those connections, with those relationships, so we're better poised to enhance the experiences and create a welcoming destination.
Awesome. Oh, Jake, I let this go blank. Sorry, I have to unlock tech problems. I speak, I don't do tech. So let's keep going. Tell us a little bit more about kind of some of the obstacles that you've faced with getting the information out that you want to move forward as a state. What has been like one obstacle that you didn't expect, and how have you overcome it?
Well, I think,
that's a total off-book question, so.
Well, I think one of the biggest obstacles is education, right? We want to make sure that it's not just the people who need accessibility services who understand what is needed. Trying to get our industry, our team members, our colleagues, and the people who give us funding to understand that this is important. This is something that needs to be done at all levels. And so trying to get folks to understand and really realize that this is something that needs to be part of everything we do. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. For overcoming, we were able to secure $1 million of funding for accessible traveler grants, as we called them. And what those programs were to do were one of two things, either to conduct an accessibility audit in your community, working with Wheel the World. There are a number of our destinations across Michigan that are about to become destination verified. We're thrilled about that. We'll be making some announcements on that over the next few weeks. And then also upgrade websites. Because again, digital accessibility is very important to us. Our website actually just received a 99.17% accessibility score. Wow. We're very proud of that. It's
incredible.
It's again, not a lot of time to go into how and why, but something we're very proud of. So I think that the grant program that we've done, it allows our DMO partners, there's that acronym again, that our local partners at the CVB level to put things in place. And to get that funding, to understand that this is needed, was the first obstacle. The next obstacle is now to get those. The funding has been awarded. Let's get all the changes in place and make sure that everything's accessible and welcoming as we can.
Love that answer.
Yeah, I totally agree. Education is, in many ways, I think probably at the core of it for us as well. Tourism is the number one industry in British Columbia, and there's over 18,000 businesses operating in the tourism space. Most of them, well over 85%, are small and medium-sized enterprises. So one of the barriers or the obstacles that we've encountered, we were charging along with the whole thing up until the pandemic. And then, of course, it kind of stopped everything. And we're still in a place where tourism's back. In fact, it's never been better, but the industry's still in recovery mode from that, as well as climate-related disasters that have come to our province and many of your states as well. So these small businesses, we surveyed them last year, and the awareness for the importance of accessible tourism is there. The willingness and the desire to step it up and become more accessible is there. But in many cases, they're basically just trying to keep their doors open. So it's always just ones, for so many of these small businesses, they don't know how to do it. So back to education, they're telling us, we want to, we know how important it is, we think we're almost there, we don't know how to get past and get, step it up and not, while we're trying to keep our businesses open. So.
You guys took some good ones there. So I would say, I think information, there's so much. We talked about the variety of abilities and information. So trying to capture all of that as a state is a challenge. I'd say strategy versus just doing things. We have a lot of debates about we need to have a strategy that all of our partners can align to. If we did that, we'd probably just be going now. So it's kind of doing things that just feel right versus having a strategic approach that we can get all of the ships going in the same direction. And I think with that, it's really interesting to see what's happening in our local communities. There's great things happening on the coast of Oregon, great things happening in Central Oregon, and it's like trying as a state to keep up with that. Assessments are a great one. We had a variety of communities doing assessments, some working with Wheel the World, some working with others, and as the state, it's like, oh, what if we all were on the same playing field, all doing the same thing? That information would be uniform for visitors coming to our site. So trying to, it's a good problem to have. Our community's doing amazing work, and almost sometimes the state is trying to keep up with that great work and say, oh, this is great. How do we scale that across the entire state?
We've been working on a video about accessible opportunities in Michigan, and we haven't been able to get it done because the script keeps changing. New opportunities come up, new initiatives come up, and we've had to say, well, we've got to have that in there. So we've got, in one of the interviews is with Christy when she was at our tourism conference. And actually that's a good point also to bring up, is at our conference, that's a great opportunity. I'm sure that you both have statewide conferences, province-wide conferences. And we really have made an effort to not only incorporate programming that talks about accessibility and how our local partners can improve accessibility and other initiatives. But also, we invite people like Christy there to come and share their experiences. So it's kind of bringing a conference like this and the programming into our state tourism conference, and we've really worked on doing that, significantly over the last 5 years or so.
Well, I mean, it's great to have this accessibility conference where we already have people who are interested in learning more, but it's a game changer when we're given a seat at the table to give input at a conference that isn't about accessibility, and we're invited to speak there and have an impact on those businesses that haven't yet quite caught on that this is the next big thing. So I appreciate the opportunity, and there are many of us here who do, and it's just incredible. So thank you again for that. So we've seen a lot here, and I think one thing to point out, all three of these areas have a lot of outdoors, and the outdoors seems to intimidate a lot of people when we talk about accessibility. How do you make an outdoor area wheelchair accessible? How do you make an outdoor area safe for an eloper or somebody who runs if they have a cognitive intellectual disability or a neurodivergency? How is that even something possible? So you have a lot to think about aside from just that, but all the different challenges within each disability. So can you tell us about the initiatives that you're implementing for these unique spaces and in your cities? What kinds of things are you adding to your state to make it more accessible? Let's start on the other end.
Sure. I love that all of the questions are not the questions that we... That keeps it spicy. I love
this one. What activities and initiatives have been implemented to date, and how much would you... Oh, I didn't ask that part. And how much have you invested?
It's all good. It's probably better.
I just like to change.
Is the Jeopardy theme available to play?
I thought I was pretty close with that one. Sorry, I like to add.
No, it's all good. I would say, from the state level, we've been really intentional about our grants, and again, kind of that strategy, no strategy. One of our grant cycles, one of our first, so 2 years ago, we did a grant cycle for $3.6 million in inclusivity and accessibility grants, and the same debate about, well, we should have a menu that people can choose from, so we're in alignment, versus let's just put it out there and see what the community needs are. And that was a wonderful experiment, I thought, because it was like, oh, we're hearing from the communities on the coast. They're doing Moby mats and getting like the chairs that they have to get people into the sand. I mean, it's just really amazing. And I also am lucky enough to serve on, I'm on a board. It's the Oregon Adaptive Sports Board, which is in Central Oregon. And their mission is to get folks into the outdoors. And the technology, I just geek out on. I don't know if you guys go check out the adventure chair out there. Like, these things, I mean, yours too.
I
Like, it's.
I keep
like,
telling the different cities, I think that every city should have these because they're just incredible. The technology.
Disc brakes, like really, like just, it's amazing. And when I go into the OAS garage and just see the technology and how it's come and how that's enabling people to have experiences that able-bodied people are having, it's just amazing. I think it's a wonderful time as far as technology in that space and getting folks. I was just talking to the adventure chair folks, and they were saying it's like this. It was widen the trail and make like major capital improvements, but the technology of the devices to get folks out are such that we don't necessarily have to do that. We can just with the equipment, get folks out and have those experiences. So I know it's rambling, but there's a lot of really cool stuff happening.
It's awesome.
No, it's right on track with one of your initiatives is using adaptive technology. Absolutely, and that's what we need in order to function outdoors. So I think that's amazing. And the fact that you engage the community itself instead of just making decisions about what you think we need, that's everything.
Can you continue to translate for me in concise ways? You can just follow me around.
Oh, yeah. Sure, I'd be happy to share. So we're fortunate in Michigan to have a very robust state park system. We have over 100 units of the State Park Service, including campgrounds, recreation areas, all kinds of different things. And they've made significant investments over the last 5 to 10 years. One example I like to use is there's an area called Tequamanon Falls. The Upper Falls is the largest waterfall east of the Mississippi, except for Niagara Falls. So it's a very popular attraction, attracting over 1 million people every year. And the lower Tequamanon Falls had this area with a paved, nice, accessible pathway. But then to get out to this little island, you had to row in a rowboat. And to get to the rowboat, you had to take a steep staircase to get down to the rowboats. And so, yes, you can see the view from above very easily. Everyone was accessible for that. But the State Park Service decided to make everything at the state park accessible. They built a $2.5 million aluminum bridge out to the island. And now we even have video footage and photos of folks out, everyone out there enjoying it. So every experience at the park is now available. But that's just one example. And a number of our larger, more popular state parks have been closed, or parts of them have been closed in the last 5 years to completely upgrade the campsites. So there are a minimum of 2 ADA compliant and beyond campsites at every one of the state park campgrounds. And they also have policies about reserving them and make sure they have at least one that has to be reserved by someone who requires those services.
Love that. I think that's brilliant. I think it's wonderful. You've also Michigan has done a lot of work on sensory needs as well. So you have some initiatives with making sure that we're caring for people with neurodivergencies, correct?
Actually, one really interesting area there is the colorblind. The state park system is now providing colorblind viewers at a number of locations, and there's also glasses that are available at some certain state parks. And so with the neurodiversity, I just flew through Grand Rapids, that's where I live, in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They just opened a new sensory room at the airport, so that you can go in there. There's even an area where if you're nervous about flying, you can practice by sitting in an airline seat. There's a row of seats there that you can sit in. So yes, trying to address those needs as well.
I love that. I love that. And now on to British Columbia. I have to say, I was shocked to find out in Vancouver all of the minivan taxis are accessible, and to see how they've done that is just so clever and
great.
brilliant. It's phenomenal. So in the minivans, the back row can be folded up and there's a ramp in the back so you can roll in if somebody with a wheelchair needs it. But if it's a larger family, they just lower that seat and now that minivan can be used for a family without a disability. And I think that is brilliant. Just one of the greatest ways to overcome some of the obstacles that we face with transportation. So hats off to you for that.
Oh, God, we had nothing to do with that. Thank you.
Well, I mean,
And I'll answer the question by kind of taking a little bit from both of my colleagues up here. At a provincial level, there's not a lot of doing that we can do, but what we do a pretty good job at through our very wide network of industry colleagues is we amplify everything that's going on across the province. So if a community is laying out Moby mats at lakes or at festivals, or if a visitor center has Enchroma glasses for loan, or they have adaptive equipment for loan, and many of them do. We have 134 visitor centers in the province of BC, and many of them are now going down that path where they have equipment for loan. So when these great things are happening that we're not directly doing, we just celebrate the heck out of that so that we can showcase to another community that it's not that expensive to purchase and work with your community to put a Moby mat in place, or to to educate and teach and train your staff. So whenever we hear about that stuff, it goes into our e-newsletter that goes out to thousands of people. We have an annual conference each year for the tourism industry. We sponsor an accessibility and inclusion award, and we continue to celebrate those winners throughout the year in as many ways as we can. And many of them are outdoor experiences. For example, we just had in northern British Columbia, which is way the heck up there, a fishing charter boat company who purpose-built a wheelchair accessible vessel at great expense, but he told his story to the industry about the why behind it, the how much, all of the hurdles he had to go through, and then the business case and how successful it's been, and now he's expanding. And we just keep talking about that stuff over and over again.
Awesome. Well, on that note, let's talk about how much has your state or province invested into accessibility, and in the spirit of this whole session where I've gone off script, what has the return on investment been for you?
I think you're up first on this one, Kevin.
We were talking about that question this morning, Kathleen and I, and it's super hard to quantify investments like the energy that we've put into that we've all put into our accessibility landing page or areas of our websites. Really, really difficult to quantify. But I will say this. For a while, I managed our state welcome centers, and we have 8. Kathleen has 150, so this might not apply to her. But for our 8, it was a great opportunity to dip our toe in the water and for small investments. We put hearing loops in all of our welcome centers. We worked with Culture City to have sensory kits and do the training. And it was so fun, if that's the right word, because it was like, oh, I can outfit all of these welcome centers. I think it was 11,000. I'm making like in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $15,000 for each of those initiatives. A no-brainer, and like the impact that I believe that has for such little investment was great. And so it was really great to be able to have that opportunity to use those welcome centers to do some of this work and test some of this. So I mean, the other things that I can quantify, we discussed our significant grant program. So $3.6 million in accessibility and inclusivity grants last year. We just last week launched a new wave at $5.2 million.
That's amazing.
And so what's really cool is to geek out for me on with the $3.6 million to see what came in, what did people do, and that's now helping us form our strategy. So those are the areas I can quantify. The other work is really tricky.
You must have had some success with the 3.6 in order to then develop the larger grants. So I think that's really, really exciting. And speaking of welcome centers, I remember driving into Texas when we moved there, this first state I moved into since becoming a wheelchair user, and just feeling so welcome when I saw, and I don't even use it, but there was an adult-sized changing table at the welcome center. And that was huge. It was like, oh, look, they do remember us. They are welcoming us. We're part. So I think the welcome centers is a great thing. Making sure those are accessible is huge. All right, who's next?
Kind of a same answer. It's really difficult. I'd say in terms of hard numbers, when we did our heavy lifting around our website in 2018, we spent about 140,000 Canadian, so that's like, I don't know, 100,000 US on that work. And then we have, every year we put a line item into our budget for 50,000 Canadian to help train, primarily internally focused, so that our staff are taking the necessary training that they need. We don't give out grants, unfortunately, but I think one point I do want to make is we've deliberately not sort of set aside a line item in our budget each year, because the work that we're doing around DEIA is really decentralized across the organization. So our travel media don't have a separate line for having, influencers that have disabilities come in. They just are part of the overall package. So we don't separate out DEIA from that from a budgetary perspective.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I wanted to try and do the best I could to try and get a number for this. And one of the people I talked with was Dave Lorenz, my former colleague, who was the vice president and travel director for Michigan for a number of years. And one of the things I took away from that wanted to share with this group, I'm sure a lot of folks here will agree, he said that one of the things we learned as we worked on new initiatives and added new capabilities is that making destinations more accessible is not only the right thing to do, it's a good business decision. And so it's really trying to make everyone feel included and making sure all are welcome. And that's something we use in a lot of our marketing, in our communications materials, that all are welcome in Pure Michigan.
I love it.
And so, yes, could we try to do some more research and efforts on saying, okay, in 2022, we had this expansion. And so I think we might be able to try and arrive closer at a number. But that state parks number, I wanted to mention that a person with the DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, mentioned to me that they received a $200 million funding allocation for upgrades across the state park system. This is federal funding that came in as part of the American Rescue Plan, and a lot of that funding. She was not able to give me a specific percentage, but every upgrade they make now includes accessible upgrades.
Amazing.
And so just hearing that put a smile on my face, like those campsites. And all the new restrooms they build, they have 100% new accessibility involved. So it's just an ongoing process, so it's hard to say, here's the budget we've spent so far. But I think, to repeat Dave's point, it is a good business decision.
I love it. I think that's great. We have, yes, Jake.
Yes. So, one, I wanted to call Kathleen out because she did a survey in 2018, I believe, and 19, of her, an accessibility survey for multiple disabilities that she sent out to her DMOs, and I think it took 6 send-outs, some big number of repeat send-outs that it took, and then then you ended up hiring a consultant to follow up. That was $50,000, if I remember correctly, and then they took all that data after what they compiled and ran it by all the different disability organizations for feedback.
Oh, wow.
And just and I wanted to just tell it because people don't know what you did. Just that feedback, I think she told me it was like 2 or 3 months of back and forth with each one of those disability organizations because they want to keep inserting things were right. And so these were things, and they now have on their website drop-down menus for each disability on what's available because of that survey. And she's given us permission to include all of those tips, that whole series of tips, into our playbook.
Amazing. That's huge.
That's great, yes.
That deserves a round of applause for sure.
I think, I mean, it again, heavy lifting at the time, well worth it, because we didn't know what we were doing, frankly. We didn't have, as an organization, we have a lot of eyeballs on our website, our consumer website, and we had some accessibility information, but not enough. And so, but we didn't know, we don't have enough people in our organization with lived experience, so that was why it was important to consult with over 20 subject matter groups across all of the disabilities in the preparation. We call it more of a checklist, so there's about 65 points of accessibility that a business can answer. They can self-assess, or they can use the support that we have in place through a group in British Columbia called Spinal Cord Injury BC that have been trained up to help those businesses to self-assess, and then they showcase that in their business listing on our website. And we've got about 1,000 businesses that have gone through that process. They can update it any time. And now the real cool thing, and I mentioned it the other day, is that other DMOs across the province are saying, why would we go and do that ourselves when we can simply, suck in through an API the data that Destination BC has collected, and that's what they're doing now. So you'll start to see that same information amplified across the whole province.
So please engage with them, take that information back to your state and ask them, please, can we make a statewide commitment on accessibility? It benefits everybody. Thank you all so much. Thank you for letting me throw some curveballs.
Thank you.
We appreciate you so much.